Have you ever thought, what if the enemy does not only want to take away your land, but also erase your language, your temples, your children, even your very thoughts? By day, they wore the guise of saints, but by night, the face of bandits. Their purpose was only one, to uproot your religious and cultural heritage from its very roots. This is that very story which you will hardly ever find in the pages of history textbooks, the war whose heroes were our ancestors, yet today their descendants have become strangers in their own homes. So come, let us begin this incomplete yet spine-chilling saga of history. The beginning of the 8th century, the rise of the Umayyad caliphs in Damascus. They did not rely only on military power. No, they had also turned religion into their greatest weapon. And their sole objective was just one, to spread the banner of the Islamic Empire as far and wide as possible. Year 712 CE, a terrifying turning point. Muhammad bin Qasim enters Sindh and defeats King Dahir. After that battle, the first permanent base of the Arab Empire was established on the soil of India. But think, was this merely a victory? No, it was the beginning of a permanent threat on the borders of India, a chilling message of unrest. Along that very route, the Arab armies advanced further, crossing Makran and Balochistan, and in 713 CE, they reached Multan. There they built a mosque, they established Islamic administration, and step by step, this foreign power began to tighten its grip on Indian soil. From the reign of Caliph Walid to later under Caliph Hisham, the series of invasions kept expanding wider and wider. Blow after blow was struck on Gandhara, on Peshawar, and even on the historic Takshashila. And thus, at the beginning of the 8th century, the northwestern frontier of India had turned into a blazing battlefield, where every single day brought not safety, but the start of a new uncertainty. Arab historians like al-Biladuri and Futu al-Buldan and al-Tabari have written these attacks were not merely raids for plunder. No, they were deliberate attempts to establish permanent Islamic rule, a rule where religion itself was turned into the greatest weapon for imperial expansion. Gandhara, Kabul, Zabul, and the small Hindu kingdoms around Kashmir were defeated one after another. Temples were destroyed, idols were desecrated, chiefs were forced to undergo conversion, and those great Buddhist Hindu cultural centers, which had flourished for centuries, slowly, painfully began to fade away. Gandhara, once a shining hub of Buddhist Hindu synthesis, now it was rapidly moving on the path of Islamization towards a dark, uncertain future. But the story does not end here. Now the eyes of the Arab army fell upon Kashmir, a treasure of unmatched heritage, a land that was not only a cultural symbol, but also of immense strategic importance from a military perspective, especially regions like Baltistan, Kargil, and Gilgit. Do you see? These very lands connected Kashmir to Central Asia, and thus became an inevitable target on the path of Islamic expansion. Difficult mountain routes, treacherous valleys, strong military defenses, what did all that matter? The caliph's order was clear. The banner of Islam must reach the borders of Kashmir. Arab traders, Arab spies, disguised in various forms, began entering Kashmir. They secretly started gathering information from within the very heart of the capital. At that time, the Karkota dynasty was rising in Kashmir, but the early rulers, they became entangled in internal strife and bitter mutual conflicts. The political instability of the capital had weakened the borders, and the Arabs used that very weakness as their greatest opportunity. Year 724 CE, a terrifying year in history, the Arab armies reached Gilgit and Baltistan. Looting began in the border villages, temples were destroyed, idols were desecrated, and inhuman attacks were unleashed on unarmed pilgrims. At the very gates of Kashmir stood a dark storm, a storm that carried not just the danger of seizing land, but of wiping out an entire civilization. The frontier of Kashmir was no longer just a threat drawn on paper. It had turned into a dreadful reality, filled with blood and flesh. And yet, surprisingly, no strong military response was seen from the capital. Why? Because by that time, no such leader had emerged in Kashmir, one who could rise not merely for the throne, but for the defense of civilization, religion, and identity. But history never remained silent. This instability could not last long. Within just a decade, the course of history was about to change. Now tell me, for the Arabs, was Kashmir going to be an easy prey anymore? No, because at that very time, a name appeared on the stage of history, King Lalitaditya In the year 724 CE, the rule of Kashmir came into the hands of such a sovereign, who was not only a king but also a commander, an unparalleled strategic planner, and above all, a cultural guardian, born to take up arms for the defense of civilization. King Lalitaditya the radiant emperor of the Karkota dynasty. The very moment he took charge of the kingdom, he focused his entire vision on military preparations and on the condition of the borders. He knew very well that every fortress, every mountain peak of the frontier could become the site of the final resistance. His goal was absolutely clear: to free Kashmir completely from the shadow of Arab invasion and to establish it as a strong, unified state. This vision was unwavering, just as his resolve was unbreakable. At the very time of his coronation, a dreadful challenge appeared on the stage of history. The regions of Gandhara and Baltistan were under constant Arab pressure. Many of the frontier Hindu chiefs were forced to surrender, while some were hiding deep within the mountains. Across all of Kashmir spread fear, uncertainty, and an unknown anxiety about the future. Seeing this situation, King Lalitaditya took strategic steps. He established a balance between the Brahmin and Buddhist communities, so that by erasing religious and ideological differences, a unified society could be built. His leadership was not only a symbol of weapons and military power, but also a symbol of the ability to bind civilization, culture, and people into one thread. According to the famous Kashmiri Pandit Kalhana, in his Rajataranjini, the very first task King Lalitaditya undertook after assuming control of the kingdom was the repair of old forts and the construction of new ones. In the difficult Himalayan regions, he established strong military outposts so that the enemy could not secretly infiltrate from anywhere. He understood very well that while Kashmir's geographical position offered natural protection, its rugged mountains and valleys could just as easily become a great obstacle in monitoring enemy movements. For this very reason, the king created an intelligence network in the frontier regions. Spies disguised as merchants and pilgrims kept watch over Arab activities, and the gathered information was immediately delivered to the capital. But tell me, was his goal merely to defend? No. He also strengthened diplomatic relations with the surrounding states, so that the borders would remain secure and the foundation of a strong, unified Kashmir could be laid. In the north, a treaty was made with the Tibetan kingdom so that the eastern frontier would remain completely secure. This made it possible to concentrate all attention on the western front. In the south as well, diplomatic ties were established with the Tripuri and Vatsa states, so that in times of need, there would be no obstacle in receiving support. Everything was becoming clear. King Lalitaditya did not seek just a single military campaign. No, he was laying the foundation for a strong, long-term resistance across all of North India. At this very time, in Kashmir's capital Parihaspura, the army was reorganized, and as a result, a new confidence was born in Kashmir. Where earlier only fear and despair reigned, now the people began to believe. In fact, they realized the reins of the state were in the hands of a man who was born not only to wear the crown, but also to wield the sword. And it was this firm resolve that marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Kashmir. At that very moment, news arrived in the capital from the frontier villages. Dust was rising towards Gandhara. The enemy was advancing again. But this time, Kashmir's response was not silence. The royal court was summoned at once. The priests recited from the scriptures, and King Lalitaditya rose from his throne. He spoke only one sentence: Kashmir will not retreat anymore. That single sentence became the symbol of his policy. Now he was not merely defending Kashmir, but preparing to free the entire northern frontier of India from Islamic invasion forever. Within just a few days, another chapter of history began. In the year 725 CE, Arab soldiers crossed the plains of Gandhara and advanced into the Himalayan foothill regions. On the orders of Caliph Hisham, commanders such as Junaid al-Muri and later Tamim ibn Jara imposed a harsh policy of suppression upon the Hindu mountain chiefs of Peshawar, Swat, and the Balti regions. The entire region was gripped with fear, with insecurity, and in every single village, the power of the enemy was being felt. In the works of Arab historians, al-Biladuri and al-Tabari, this military campaign is described in detail. But they also admit establishing permanent rule in this region had become extremely difficult. The local kings and chiefs adopted guerrilla tactics instead of open warfare. Ambushes were carried out on the mountain passes, and the Arab soldiers had to struggle every single day against exhaustion, fear, and relentless resistance. Even so, gradually their influence began to spread in some regions, especially in the areas of Baltistan and Gilgit. The spies of King Lalitaditya arrived in the capital Parihaspura with news. Foreign armies had set up camp in the highlands of Baltistan. This was no ordinary warning. This was a direct call, the war bugle for the defense of existence itself. Now, there remained no room for doubt in the royal court. King Lalitaditya immediately sent special orders to the officers stationed at the frontier. And this order was not merely an instruction for defense, it was a powerful command to push back the invaders. At that time, due to the pressure of Arab invasions, some senior Hindu chiefs of Gandhara sent desperate requests for assistance to Kashmir. They knew their armies would not be able to withstand the Arab assault. King Lalitaditya responded to these requests in clear, thunderous words. If Gandhara is to be defended, then the war will not be fought on our land, it will be fought on theirs. According to the Raja Tarangini, at this very moment, the king dispatched certain chosen officers to the frontier regions. They went there, directly assessed the situation, and sent back alarming reports. In some villages of Baltistan, Muslim soldiers had desecrated Shiva temples. This was the very moment when Kashmir, for the first time, made the firm decision to answer Arab conquests, and King Lalitaditya declared, "Today I vow, until I drive the last Arab soldier out of the Himalayas, I shall not sit in peace." This declaration was not mere words, it was a symbol of unbreakable resolve, of unmatched courage, of steadfast leadership. It was a pledge that would change an entire era. That very day, King Lalitaditya began giving final shape to his war strategy. First, he identified those frontier routes where Arab soldiers were most active, especially the Kargil Valley, the bed of the Shak River, and the ancient trade routes of Dras. According to the Raja Tarangini, King Lalitaditya created a special Tushka Operations Council. This council included all those officers who had clear knowledge of Arab policy, language, and military structure. And the task of these officers was clear: to break the Arabs' intelligence-based strategies, to publicly expose their internal divisions, and to precisely monitor every single enemy movement. At this very time, King Lalitaditya made a proclamation to the neighboring states: if Kashmir falls today, then tomorrow it will be your turn. This message was not merely a warning, it was a call for unity, the very foundation of a united resistance. And from that moment, Kashmir and its frontier regions began to move toward a new resolve and a new unity. From Baltistan came dreadful news. A secret Arab camp had taken local Hindu women and children captive. The moment this news spread, a wave of outrage swept through the streets of Parihaspura. Witnessing such atrocities, many volunteers took a vow to march to the frontier and to offer their service. Kashmir was no longer only preparing for war, it was boiling with fury. The Raja Tarangini describes this entire sequence of events as the era of the Great Resolve, a time when the soul of Kashmir came alive, not only in prayer, but also in resistance. And leading this resistance was the very king who had taken the firm vow to free the Himalayas from foreign invasion. This is where we conclude today's video. But the story hasn't ended yet. The most thrilling, the most unforgettable part, I'll bring for you in the next episode, so don't miss it. Friends, if this story touched your heart, do show your support by giving it a like. Don't forget to share your feelings in the comments. Who knows, your thoughts might inspire someone else too. And to discover more such unheard tales from history, glorious legends, and the fascinating chapters of ancient Indian culture, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Come, let us rediscover together our lost heritage, the forgotten stories of India.